I recently watched this video from a popular YouTuber called Takashi from Japan. On his channel he interviews people in Japan about all kinds of things, and this one video really caught my attention. In it he talks to people about the cheating culture in Japan, and more specifically he asks, is prostitution cheating? What's remarkable here is the fact that most of the women Takashi asks say they don't see it as a form of cheating. Now, obviously this isn't the answer that the whole population would give, as Japan is a huge country with over 123 million people. But I figured there was a story somewhere behind these answers. So this is Japan's odd cheating culture. Before we talk about how Japanese people might see this type of work differently from other cultures, let's remember that in a country as populous as Japan, not everyone will agree on something, least of all something like this. Views on this type of work will differ among people from different regions, of different ages, of different socioeconomic backgrounds, and even just person to person. That said, some opinions seems to be more common in Japan than elsewhere. I should also note that in the video I watched, the interviewer is asking whether fusuku is considered cheating. And Japanese is a complex language, and I am definitely not an expert, but from what I can understand, this word is used to describe the whole industry, like the sex industry. But most of that is based around conversation, dancing, bathing, and other things to remain legal. Because prostitution, as you think of it, isn't legal in Japan. So when the interviewer asked these women if they consider it cheating, if their boyfriend or husband were participating in fusuku, they might be answering to the thought of their respective partner going to a kuyabakura, which is sort of a men's club, a place where men traditionally go after work. Now with that out of the way, we're still in for a ride when it comes to this culture. So we stated this type of work isn't legal in Japan, but it's not a black and white issue. In this respect, Japan is like many other places in the world, where most jurisdictions don't ban all kinds of this outright. There are usually loopholes or laws that aren't enforced, or laws against certain activities that relate to prostitution but not the act itself. In 1956, the Japanese legislature passed the Prostitution Prevention Law. The law seeks to prevent, discourage and restrict this type of work, but it doesn't criminalize the whole industry outright. And this is why this type of work continues to exist semi-transparently in Japan, and might explain why some Japanese people don't think it's that big of a deal. Now, this line of work has existed in Japan for millennia. Again, this is true of most places in the world, but in Japan, supervised prostitution has existed for centuries. At some point, probably during the 17th century, the government began setting up red light districts. These areas were known as yukako, and were officially recognized by the government in contrast to okabasho, which were places where prostitutes and brothels operated illegally. After World War II, prostitution boomed in Japan. There were many young women, fewer young men because of wartime casualties, and not a lot of jobs. However, there were lots of US and other Allied soldiers there as part of the post-war occupation of Japan. And it's not hard to figure out what happened next. The popularity of this line of work disturbed the Supreme Allied Command in charge of Japan during this time, so they abolished the yukako system. In the following years, both the Allied Command and the Japanese government took steps to discourage the industry, but they never banned it outright though, and it exists to this day. And as I said before, fusuku isn't usually what you might call a brothel or a bordello. These are places where workers, usually women, entertain clients, usually men, in a variety of ways. This can include intimate touching, but it might not. Traditionally, these were places businessmen and laborers might visit after work. Bosses might even bring their employees to these places, and businessmen might bring clients. And this culture might not be as popular nowadays, but it's hard to tell. Fusuku don't keep rigorous records, especially if they operate on, well, the shadier side of things. And clients of these workers aren't always keen to come forward and identify themselves. But I figured maybe we can figure out how popular this industry is by looking at how much money it generates. In 2002, Japanese economist Takashi Kadokura estimated that this entire industry in Japan was worth $193.3 billion a year. That figure represents 4.9% of Japan's gross domestic product. And Kadokura estimated that prostitution specifically generated $14.2 billion annually. And more recent but less clear estimates put that number between $24 and $40 billion. Statista estimates that there are around 33,000 fusuku operating within the industry in Japan. And in 2011, Japan's Model Press estimated that there were about 5,000 fusuku in Tokyo alone. Extrapolating from that, they guessed that 50,000 women worked in the industry in Tokyo. And while this video focuses on the culture of men paying women for services, I should also point out that there are fuzuku that hire and cater to LGBTQ people as well. Not all the women employed by these businesses are prostitutes though. Some are hostesses, some are cleaners, and some are non-sexual masseuses. Another thing to note is that at many massage parlors and spas where intimate touching is available for purchase, that's as far as it goes. Paying somebody to touch you, that's legal in Japan, but full-on action, that's illegal. And I knew this type of work happened in Japan partly because I've heard about their famous love hotels. There are about 37,000 of these hotels in Japan, and they have small rooms designed for short stays, even for stays as short as 1 hour. And in many countries, only shady hotels offer hourly rates, but in Japan, love hotels are renowned for being clean and tidy. And while these workers do often take their clients to these hotels, they might not even be the main clientele. You see, love hotels are also frequented by young lovers who need a place to be alone, by adulterers, and by people who just need a quick nap or a cheap place to stay. We can tell by these data that this kind of work is fairly common in Japan and, in a sense, also accepted. Of course, there are Japanese people who are against this type of work, and there are many others who just aren't interested in it. But as Takashi's video demonstrates, many women don't think it's a big deal if their partner engages in some part of this industry. Some of the women explain their feelings about this. Some believe that a man is much less likely to develop feelings for a worker of this sort, and therefore while hiring a prostitute might be a type of physical cheating, it's not a form of emotional cheating that some Japanese women would find more unpleasant. Seeing a worker of this type might not present the same threat to the relationship as an ongoing flirtation with a female friend or colleague. And when explaining their feelings on this, some women mentioned Japan's long history in this line of work. One even talks about how it's different if her partner is with his boss or colleagues, and she might not be okay with her partner going on a one-on-one alone in a bedroom, but him being entertained by women in a fuzuku along with his colleagues doesn't seem to bother her. And this seemed to touch on what many of the women said, which is that this is all part of Japanese culture. Many Japanese women don't find it odd that their boyfriends or husbands might want to see a worker of this type. And honestly, this surprised me, because I always thought of Japanese culture as being more conservative, at least in some ways. And this is partially true. I know that some Japanese people have feelings about women's roles in society that differs from beliefs in Western nations. And I know that Japanese people tend to dress conservatively. And this doesn't include the people in outlandish costumes in places like Shibuya region of Tokyo, of course, but it's also true that Japanese dirty movies routinely blur genitalia with a pixelated mosaic. And even this seems conservative in its own way, even though this type of Japanese entertainment can also be, well, very different from what you find in other cultures. Anyway, regardless of what I knew or thought I knew about how socially conservative Japan is, I thought some things are pretty common in any culture. If somebody is married or in a monogamous relationship and they meet with a worker of this sort, their partner would probably call that cheating and be pretty angry about it. But for a significant number of Japanese women, this doesn't seem to be true. So why is this? Is it just because Japanese businessmen have been going to fuzuku for so many decades? Well, maybe. But it's possible that Japanese religious practices play a role too. The traditional religion in Japan is Shintoism, and many Japanese who practice Shinto rituals and traditions also practice Buddhism. About 70% of Japanese people subscribe to Shinto and 67% to Buddhism. And making love is not a taboo in the Shinto religion, and there aren't many Buddhist restrictions on it either. So it's different from religions like Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. In fact, in Japanese history, there was something called Aruki Miko, and these were Shinto priestesses who wandered around the country performing religious services. And in some tellings of these stories, these priestesses also performed services of, well, the sensual type, making them kind of a sacred prostitute. And let's be clear here. It's not clear how true this is, but the stories are well documented, so the idea has definitely influenced Japanese culture. Many other countries have long traditions of this type of work too. For example, other Asian nations have developed entire industries around this that cater specifically to tourists. Governments often turn a blind eye to this type of work because they believe it encourages foreigners to visit their country and spend money. And this is another way in which Japan seems different. The Japanese tourist industry is huge, yet there doesn't appear to be much of that type of tourism. In fact, many Japanese fuzuku don't allow tourists and Westerners. They prefer their clients to be Japanese. And it's not totally clear why this is. Maybe they don't think that foreigners will understand this type of Japanese culture, and it's possible they don't trust foreigners to be safe or even clean. Or maybe there's an overall desire to avoid showing this side of Japan to other cultures. There are other services available in Japan that are related to this industry but which aren't fusuku. For example, you may have heard of Japanese maid cafes. These cafes operate much like any other cafe in the world. You can buy your coffee, tea and baked goods. However, the workers are dressed as French maids, and you can chat with them, sing karaoke with them, and even do arts and crafts with them. These cafes allow for emotional intimacy with cute cosplayers, but no physical intimacy. But what about a female client seeing a male worker of this type? Does it happen? It probably does happen, but very occasionally. But there's a similar type of non-sexual work that happens far more often in Japan. Here you can rent a boyfriend for a day. You can pay a charming and polite man to take you out on a fun date, and there are even bars and karaoke places where male hosts can play the role of a boyfriend for their customers. These men aren't prostitutes or gigolos, they simply offer companionship to women who are lonely, too busy with their careers to get a boyfriend, or who simply wants to have something fun to do for an evening. And you can even pay your rented boyfriend to sleep, like literally sleep with you. And there are also women who will sleep with or hug men as a service. Loneliness and lack of intimacy are clearly a problem in Japan, as it is in many places of the world, but these services are overall kind of wholesome, even if the costumes aren't always totally wholesome. Japan has a huge population and sex work is a murky industry, so there's a lot we didn't get to cover. But we tried to cover this culture as good as we could. Is there something important about this type of work in Japan that we missed? Let us know in the comments. Then go learn about something else in the world by clicking one of the videos on your screen right now.